What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Spear and Clover podcast, the show for visionary entrepreneurs who see the world as it could be and can't help but take action. We are the petri dish that seeks to produce a culture of bigger dreams, better teams, and deeper pockets. As always, I'm your host, Jason Skisic, and I am super excited for this one. Today's guest is my good friend, TJ Belger, owner of TJ's Gyms in Marin County, California. Guys, this was an unbelievable conversation with a person that I truly respect. There is a ton to take away for any entrepreneur looking to grow their business through authenticity and community. Please welcome my brother, TJ Belger. All right, Spear and Clover podcast. I'm your host, Jason Skisic. I'm here today with TJ Belger, owner of TJ's Gym. TJ, how you doing, man?
I'm great, buddy. I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much for coming on. So just to kind of at the outset, TJ and I are a member of a small group mastermind. We meet every single week, but this is one of the first times and certainly will be the most extensive that we've talked one-on-one. So I'm super pumped to hear more about your story. So again, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's fun. We'll probably get into it a little bit, but it's really great to see your friends making moves, doing new cool things, in their place of expertise. So this is great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so one of the things I always like to do is just start with sort of like who you are, kind of talk to us a little bit about your business, how long you guys have been doing it, and we'll kind of just go from there. Does that sound good?
Awesome. Love it. So I do this often because in our introduction to new clients, I give this little spiel pretty quickly, but I'll try to make it a little more entertaining. So I grew up in New Jersey. I went to college in Virginia at Lynchburg College, now University of Lynchburg, simply because for basketball, I was either going to not go to college or go into the military, just not knowing what that held in store for me. After playing sports in college, I was loosely supposed to either become a coach / teacher. And I started going down that path and I was like, wait, I need an adventure. So moved short term to California, which is where I've been for the last 30 years. So became a personal trainer right after I got here in 1992, along with a ton of other part-time jobs, bartending and doing construction. And I walked into a gym in my neighborhood and they had a help wanted sign on the desk. This is in the city of San Francisco, and you got a free gym membership for showing people like how to work the treadmill and how to move the pin and the seats up and down and all that stuff on the machines. Yeah. And then people started asking me if I did personal training, and I loved the gig. It was at a big gym, and you just would walk around and chat with people. And if the people didn't want to chat, you didn't chat with them. And that slowly started to grow. I had a confluence of events where one of them was, I had a client and he said, this is probably 1993, 94. He said, you need a website. And I was like, I don't know what that is. And he said, it's on the internet. And I was like, I don't know what that is either. And so I was the first personal trainer in San Francisco to have a website. So that kind of helped launch me kind of out in front when everything started to blow up in the early to mid 90s. So right place, right time. I started a small personal training company where I had a few trainers who worked for me all around San Francisco. I met my wife in the late 90s, second half of the 90s. We moved up to Marin County, where in 2002, I did what I thought was the next logical step. I opened a gym and I did not know what I was doing. I had not a clue. 5,000 square feet. With machines, treadmills, ellipticals, mirrors on the wall, racks of dumbbells, just a community neighborhood gym that was personal training / membership style. And that's what we did. We had our two daughters in 2002 and 2004 and just kind of whaled it from there. So,
Yeah. And you were a CrossFit affiliate, right? Do you know what year did you guys do that?
Yeah. So in 2005, one of my this teenager, interestingly enough, came to me and he said, do you know that this thing CrossFit? And I was like, no. He's like, my cousin is in Santa Cruz and he's on the Santa Cruz water polo team and they're doing these workouts called CrossFit. He says, it's awesome. I was like, later that day I went up and I looked it up and I was like, oh, I could use some of this stuff. It's cool. It's kind of, and so I started, like, okay, I can fill a basketball with sand, and I can build these parallettes out of PVC, and
I did both of those.
There you go. And I could create a slosh pipe, right, at a 8-foot 6-inch PVC.
Oh,
and, as long as none of this stuff costs me money, we happen to have a guy who sells sporting goods equipment. It's a Russian guy who was in my town. And every time I went in there to buy little things like, just for the gym, clips or, something like that, he always had kettlebells. And I went in there one day, I was like, I think those dusty cannonballs with the handles on them you got over there, I think I want to buy a few. Yeah. And he was like, why? Nobody buys those things. And so I had access to stuff like that. So we started following the principles. We ended up getting affiliated, I think, in 2007, and we went all in. And, I think a lot of people know this, but some might not. The main thing that we took away from it, so we ended up moving more towards the group model. We always did personal training, but, before CrossFit showed up, men and women didn't work out together. Yeah. Maybe they ran together, or maybe they hiked together, but they went to the gym, and then they went to the 2 separate parts of the gym, and they didn't really interact. And this thing, all of a sudden, people were coming together, and they were doing like the kid switch in the parking lot. The dad would come, and then the mom would come later, and they jump out of the car. And also it took away the stigma of strength training. Right. Yeah. I mean, bodybuilding was around, as but it made strength training accessible to people to be like, you need to do this. And so I'll always give credit to Greg Glassman for that. It did change. It was an inflection point in the world of fitness, as we all know, but it's something it's fascinating because it's not going to go away. People putting their hands on a barbell, or people working out till they're sore or reaching an intensity level, that's not going away. That's going to be around forever,
That's so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so kind of to backtrack a little bit, first of all, I've never heard anybody say it quite like that, but that's immediately very crystal clear of like the male and female thing and on common ground, right? The way that things are scaled and stuff. And I think that's part of the CrossFit story for sure. For those people that are watching this, because obviously this is not just a fitness podcast, but for those people watching this at home, 2007 or 2005, when you maybe became aware of it, is very, very early. We're talking the infancy of CrossFit, which brings me to my second point, which is the 2 things I pulled away from that are in 1993, you were advised about a website. Obviously, you're living in Silicon Valley, right? Mm-hmm. And then in 2000, I forget what you said, 4 or 5, or whenever you first became aware of CrossFit, you kind of got this like early notice of what's coming. But I don't think that's the interesting part. I think the interesting part is that you took advantage of both of those things and acted on them. And at a time when so many people would have been like, flash in the pan, we're personal trainers. Or like, website, what's this? I'm not a tech guy. I don't need a website. And so, was there anything that you can think back to, or is that something that you've always been, this early adopter thing where you benefit from being in California, right? You're the entrepreneur, you live in California, was there anything in either of those decisions or even in other decisions like them that I'm sure there are many in your own head where you kind of looked at, wow, I'm gonna move on this and jump to that next lily pad maybe before I even know if it's going to be a big deal or not?
I think, and this from when we're in the group meetings together, I have always been, it's always seeking out information from people who I respect, trust, all that stuff. I'm always saying, I literally will take the most major life events, marriage, having kids, opening a business, taking these risks. And I will go to people and be like, I think I'm going to ask her to marry me. And I want to know what you think about that. I truly want to know what you think about us together, or I trust you to tell me. And I can remember when I was, when the gym was doing its thing in it pre-CrossFit, and I went out to coffee with a successful local businessman who came to the gym, and he was like, I think this is a terrible idea. I think you need to lean into what you've got. You've got these neighborhood people coming, and they really like it and they feel safe. And And I think for me, I almost felt I had nothing to lose. And I always do feel that way. I don't have anything. Let me take this shot.
Yeah.
I'll fail, right? Like people fail all the time. And so that's the one thing that I think that I felt comfortable doing. I don't think I can give myself 100% credit of just having a lightning bolt moment. I really kind of looked at it and said, I think this is good. People are commenting about it. Back then it was like people were coming in, trying it and quitting. And I was used to people latching on. They would become members, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe this isn't the right thing, or maybe it is, but I have to do it differently. But back then you were like, how do I do it differently? I mean, we're sharing, there's 12 people in this class sharing 2 barbells. There was no such thing as women's barbells. There wasn't stuff, the carpenters who came to the gym were building my boxes, and the gym coach who had extra basketballs would drop them off. And, the guy who had the ranch was dropping off tires. And I mean, it was, and we were, for those who have been around long enough, when the Jim Jones, the original Mark Twight video came out with the Duhast in the background, that was really firing people up. There was so much of it that was like, oh, this isn't as CrossFit-y. It's kind of like dirty, grimy, not as controlled, just like really pushing people. And then the 300 video came out. Yeah. And you were like, oh, maybe I can just have people drag tires around for a while in the parking lot while I've tried to figure out, because they were like, what are we doing tomorrow? You know what I mean? Like, we can't drag tires because we did that today. And it was like, okay, broomstick mile. That was like novel when you would have them carry a PVC pipe on a 400-meter run and come back and do 50 push presses with a PVC pipe and then run back out the door carrying and they're running down the street at 5:30 in the morning. Like, they bought into the whole, like, we're warriors, we're different, we're freaks, we're angry when people back out of their driveways in front of us while we're trying to run 400 meters for time with our PVC pipes. And so that collectively it was exciting. It was dynamic. Something was crackling, and at the same time, the business model was horrific. I mean, it was just pre-Mind Body or any of those platforms, how do you do this? CrossFit was like, no, thank you. I'm not, I went down to Santa Cruz a bunch and just stood around and was like, how is this working? And it was interesting because back then it was all the big kids that we've all like worshiped at the altar of, and they were just clamoring and fighting for space. And they were doing it in small groups. They were just 2 or 3. They would have 1 or 2 or 3 people, and they would like get there 20 minutes early, and they would scoop up a box and a kettlebells, and they would go to the corner of the parking lot and just be like, don't, guard their stuff until their client got there. Yeah. And so, then I went down to Andy Petronic's internship, I think in 2008, where he held this, I went on the CrossFit message board and I was like, who's doing a business with this thing? Like, who is literally running? And, a lot of people were saying, well, I'm doing this. And a lot of the early ones, and Andy just, reached out to me and was like, I'm doing this thing. And I think it was $5,000 or something like that. And it was like, what? Like, that's like, that's 2 months of what we're making. Yeah. And I had little kids then. And I was like telling my wife, I'm going to go away for a week and sleep in this guy's gym and learn these things. And it was crazy. It was crackling, which was fun.
So I'm convinced within the first month of being on calls with you and communicating in the way that we do in this sort of round robin style, I'm convinced that you have a superpower. But you, more than anybody that I can think of off the top of my head, I can't quite put my finger on what it is. And so maybe during this conversation, I'll be able to kind of zone in on it. But one of the things that I'm hearing is not only are you're aggressively seeking out outside information, but you're like taking action and not always in the same direction as what that information is telling you to do. And so there is some instinct there, some entrepreneurial sort of, and the word probably is visionary, and nobody's comfortable that's healthy, being called a visionary, but genuinely, like, I think that's what that is. That's that vision of seeing something that could be, and sort of like taking action to make it that way. So the question then would be, kind of looking back, did you ever feel, going back to like when you were a kid or when you were in school, did you ever feel like you would be an entrepreneur? At what point did you first kind of think that, or was it a utilitarian thing that just happened?
I don't think I used the term entrepreneur until maybe 7-8 years ago. I don't even think that was in anyone's vernacular. There was like Entrepreneur Magazine that felt like this is where you buy your DeLorean or your, how to get the better seat on the Concorde, something like that. Like, I mean, it just felt like archaic and like, what is that? Yeah. And, small business owner was obviously probably more the concept and phrase. And there was just it's funny because growing up, that probably wasn't the case. I like to joke that when I was in my 20s, on a motorcycle, racing around from client's house to client's house, and I didn't have to go to the warehouse job anymore. And I only bartended because it was fun, and I didn't have to go to the construction job. And I used to then joke, and I was like, it's funny because I got to figure out how to keep doing this, because I was joking with my clients, because I don't work well for others. Like, that's just, there you go. And I think that just became very apparent, where I was like, I got to kind of bet on myself. And, and then at the same time, when we were right before we started the CrossFit thing, we didn't think the gym, my wife and I, it was going to do it. It was going to make it. The life of what the family needed. We had bought a home and, all that stuff that you need when you take that responsibility for having a family and all that stuff. The gym wasn't growing at the same rate. Life grew at a very, very fast incline, and the gym was like puttering along and doing better, but it wasn't going to match. It wasn't going to meet at the point we needed to meet. And my wife and I, she was like, so I think it's time to use that network. Like, I think you got to get a job. I think, people will hire you, they like you, and you might have to go work for Bob's Paper Company. And you might have to go work for, one of these weird tech things, and
wouldn't have been a terrible idea.
I know, but I was like, oh my God, it made me sick. Of course I was willing to do it. And so it's funny because when, you get to that edge of that cliff and it's like, look, you're going to jump off. And you're like, yeah, I know. I will. Here I go. I'm going to go. Ooh, not ready. Like, knowing it's going to happen, so therefore, why not now? Sometimes I have to get right to the edge and walk to the edge and walk back again, walk to the edge and walk back again, knowing it's going to happen, doing all that self-talk of, well, maybe I don't have to do this. Maybe I don't. Maybe I can just, I can go back down that hiking trail back behind me and all the way back down again. It took 2 hours to get up here, but that'll be fine. Nobody will care, and I try more and more to tell myself, like, this is going to happen, so do your thing, meet with your people and talk to your things and find when the timing is right and do whatever that thing is you do, but it's going to happen. And I think that was something that I started telling myself more and more, not to get too personal and stuff, but it's kind of funny. I would like to know, the Gary Vee story of his parents were his greatest champions, and a lot of people with that, background of whether it's a train wreck or whether it's been the most beautiful thing that ever happened in the world. I don't know where it comes from. My in-laws are these saints on earth. These people who live their life for their loved ones. I mean, it's literally, they're perfectly content. My father-in-law is a physician. You could call, has worked for himself for 40, 50 years, whatever it is, 50 years. He's 80 years old, and he just had his practice bought out by a big hospital group, but he ran the show, and all the nightmares and struggles of partners and employees and business being slow, and the entire business evolving and changing. And, my mother-in-law's a librarian, works for the county, got a paycheck. She retired, got that pension after 30 years. Next day she went to work. as an hourly, and I don't know where that drive or concept of, taking that swing, my biggest concern is missed potential or, opportunities. I haven't maxed my self opportunity, my self possibilities,
Yeah.
that's a fear to me. I wouldn't call it necessarily a drive, but it's like, oof, that would make me, yeesh, did you do everything you could do? Did you wring it out?
I share that. Yeah, I share that. I feel the same way. There's times where opportunities have presented themselves all the time, really, that are maybe in excess in whatever measure of what I'm currently doing or what I want to do. And a lot of times it's like, yeah, but I want to make sure I do the best I can. I really do want to make sure that I do the best I can. And I think that's a byproduct, though. I think there are some people, I think that the people where that's the first degree, true, a priori thing that drives them, those people are trying to be something for other people. I think the thing that you're telling me, and the thing that I think I share, is from a very young age, I could only pursue those things that I was passionate about or that brought me joy or that helped other people or something. And so because of that driver, it makes it so easy to take that jump off of a cliff when you go like, oh, but I love CrossFit now. Or I'm just so passionate about, the publishing industry or marketing or whatever it may be. We both know people that are super passionate, in your case, maybe tech companies or whatever it may be. But those people that are motivated to do everything they possibly can, I think that's the byproduct of, because the things that they do are giving them energy and are creating a solution to a problem for a ton of people. I don't think that the people that go out and say like, I want to become a titan of industry, I don't think those people, even if successful, find as much happiness as somebody like you would. Just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, though, that's what I'm hearing from you is like, you pursued those things. And it sounds to me like you did it in the face of like other opportunities and adversity in the form of maybe other career paths you could have taken, and the fact that you had a young family at home, the fact that you still were able to synthesize that information to being, and so we're going to go this direction, I think is really interesting. And I think our listeners will agree. Yeah, that's really interesting.
I've shared with you, sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
But I've shared with you in the group that my darkest days, when I'm perfectly honest, when I literally went to therapy, was when I was at the peak. I had 4 gyms at the peak of CrossFit, 2011, 12, crushing it. I mean, we were the only game in town. We were pre-Soul Cycle. We were pre-organized hot yoga. We were pre-Orange Theory. We were the only game in town. We were the only church. We were the only club. We were the only, there wasn't anything like us for the people who lived in our area and what they wanted. And I drove from gym to gym multiple times a day, struggling to find out what the hell I was supposed to be doing, because lightning was striking and I didn't know what to do with it because I had built it. I did it. I did the building. I painted the walls and I laid down the mats and I did the intros and I did my song and dance at the gym and at bars after in the evenings and at kids' soccer games and in the supermarket. And I just had this thing going, but I was like, this is fleeting. Lightning doesn't keep striking. Yeah. Right. And I didn't know what to do. And I literally was in a panic. I was suffering because I've discovered that I've shared with you too, that I like to build. I never had the concept of build to sell. I didn't even know what that meant. I was holding and gripping so tight to this thing that when, as everybody has experienced, when those guys left to start a gym and then those guys left to start a gym, it was a huge deal. And it wasn't, and when this key member quit, it was a huge deal and it wasn't. And, I look now and I'm like, wow, if I could have just, that was the time to enjoy it, soak it in, know that you're going to come down the other side of the roller coaster, and then, pick up some stuff. I probably was checking in with my mentors and trusted allies the least at that time, because I felt like nobody understood.
Well, and you were on top of the mountain.
Exactly.
You had honed it. Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's funny. I've used this concept dozens of times since, but it came from a conversation with you, and that is this idea of the 3 mountains, right? You can, you get to the top of a mountain. You've built your business. Listen, your 4 gyms, they weren't going to start doing $200,000 a month each, right? Like that wasn't going to happen. So you're at the top of the mountain, right? You can either sit on top of that mountain. You can keep those 4 gyms. You can continue to crank out cash and start to take up woodworking or whatever hobbies that you want to take up. You can sit on top of that mountain. And I think for some people's temperament, that's the move, right? You can come off of the mountain and start up the same mountain again. You could say, all right, we're going to build 4 more gyms. We're going to put them in Southern California. We're going to put them in Portland, whatever we're going to do. Absolutely could have done that. And for some people's temperament, that probably would be exactly the right decision. Or you can come down off that mountain and you can start over in a totally different mountain. We can do something else. And I know that we will go towards that in this conversation, but we can start to look at different peaks. We can start to build something new, because at the end of the day, are you and this is a question, are you in fitness entrepreneur, are you more fitness or are you more entrepreneur? And the answer I'm actually curious in, but.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely more entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because I feel that fitness is too thin a lane. It doesn't scratch my itches, if you will. It does. And it doesn't, and it's not malleable enough. I know. And I think people would be like, what are you talking about? I mean, you can do anything you want and you can create whatever you want. But I mean, it was either going to be a gym or a bar. I mean, I think that was the way it was going to be. And I think a lot of people who ended up where we ended up probably have the same thing. I wasn't going to end up being an estate attorney. I wasn't going to end up it was going to be something that required relationship and standing there and being like, I don't have any skill sets except I can kind of spin a good yarn. I can make connections with people. That's it. And I don't know what else you're supposed to do with that. And I was never, my God, the people who work for me are way more nerdy about the fitness side of things. Thank God. I collect things, a couple of things stick in my head and I deliver it well. But, it had to be me doing my thing and I don't know, I hate to say building a community, but even if my community was my 20 disparate clients that I had when I was a personal trainer, I was sharing stories with each of them, even though they didn't know each other. And I was at 7 different locations a day, this guy's house and to the park for this one and this small personal training gym for this person, a Gold's gym for that person. And that's what they wanted. They wanted to, I give a good hour.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And so I don't know what else I was supposed to do with that though. I mean,
well, even if it had been a bar, it's the same concept. I think the brilliance of fitness is, and I think genuinely like this is you're going to see if you're just tuning in, it's your first show, or if you've only seen a few, there's going to be more fitness folks. That's who I've worked with. Right. And we're going to try and get as many folks in from outside of that and obviously grow it as we go. But the brilliance of the fitness market is, number one, you can do it anywhere. Everybody needs it. Right. And number 2, you get to see the direct results, and it's like unquestionably virtuous, especially if you choose to make it unquestionably virtuous. And so here you are, if you own a gym, you get to see the results in your clients. You get to see the smiles on their faces. I lost count at like 5. There's children that exist in this world because their parents met at our gym, right? Like that's an impactful thing. You get to see the results of your labor. And I would argue in maybe a slightly less virtuous way, the bar's the same thing. You have a karaoke night and everybody has a great time, or whatever it may be. So that's pretty interesting, man. So another thing I kind of wanted to hit on was, so talk to me about, through your career, which has been, I'll just say it for you, very successful. You're one of the more successful gym owners that I know. I know very few people, particularly in the CrossFit space, who have ever been successful with more than one location, let alone 4, and certainly none that have had the longevity that you've had. So, I'll do that part for you. I'm a sweet guy. That's what everybody says about me. But the question is, how did you acquire clients from back in the day, and then how do you acquire clients now?
That's awesome. It's an awesome question, simply because once again, like having kids, when you have employees and they trust you with working for you, you have to teach them stuff like you teach your kids. You have to just tell them, this is a responsibility of mine, and I'm going to tell you what to do, and then I'm going to hold you accountable, and I'm going to keep checking in to make sure that you are getting what you want out of this, right? And a big mistake I made was assuming everybody wanted to get out of this what I wanted to get out of it, right? Like I definitely felt like, okay, money first, like you got to get paid, you got to pay those bills, you got to do. I never thought that people didn't care about money. That just never struck me, as a thing. And I was like, wait, you have a trust fund? Like, why are you working for me? And they're like, I just love it. And I'm like, oh shit. Okay. So when I was taking the leap, I was working for this gym way back in the day in the 90s, and I was getting ready to make the leap. I was like, there's this guy who owns this personal training studio, and he wants me to just take all my clients out of this big gym. And it's like everybody else, like that's not enough hours. Like, and the gym feeds me clients. And then now, oh my God, I'm going to be responsible to find my own people. And this guy who owned this personal training studio was like, I might be able to feed you somebody here and there, but I don't, I just set up a space for people to use. Like, but you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. You just got to do it. When people know that you're on your own. And I was like, One of my clients said, here's what you need to do. Go to the 3 or 4 hottest, ask your clients, hottest hair salons in San Francisco. Architects and Heroes, Coffee and Donuts, DiPietro Todd, and whatever the other one was. Walk in, ask to speak to find out who the hot stylist or the owner is, and ask for either that person or both, whoever's available. And when they walk up and to you, can I help you? Say, I would like to train you for free. And in exchange, I'll train you once a week for free. And in exchange, I would like a referral a month. And here's my card. I'm really good at what I do. I can come to your home, meet you in a park. I work out of this studio or this studio, and that's it. And turn around and walk away. And it fucking worked.
I've never heard of anybody doing that. That's amazing.
And we can curse on this thing, right?
Oh yeah, we can say fuck.
Yeah, okay, good. So it worked. And literally within 2 months, I was so full. They kept my cards at their station because I asked them to, right? Everything I asked them to do, they did. And because I was like, I am dedicating myself. And when they were like, I just wish I could do this more often a week, I was like, you know what? Let's do it twice a week. Screw it. Come on. I'm dedicated to you.
Well, and you know what? When you're doing something you love, though, it doesn't feel like you're giving anything up at that stage.
Totally.
Where you're just like, yeah, fuck it. Let's do it 3 times. What, you want to come to my house?
Exactly
let's
right.
barbecue afterwards.
Yeah. And especially when you've convinced yourself, you're like, this is the way this is going to work. Yeah. And so I'm willing to do this. Right. And once again, it was also like I had the bartending gig. Do I pick up an extra bartending shift? That means those 6 a.m. clients are going to be brutal, but am I going to work Sundays? Yes, I'm going to work Sundays. Am I going to work Sunday afternoons? Yes, I'll work Sunday afternoons, just because you're like, I got to make this thing happen somehow, some way. And within 2 months, I had to tell those 3 stylists, so I appreciate everything you've done for me. But the slot that you have is now a pretty desired slot. And I'm going to give you a discount, but I am going to have to charge you. They were happy to pay me, happy to.
Yeah.
And that right there is a thing that I have told every single one of the people who've worked for me. Nobody knows your shit's for sale if you don't tell them. And then also what I did at the same time is I had my group of friends that I palled around with in San Francisco who were they were bartenders, and they were assistants for people in financial companies. They were like low level, 23, 24-year-old, what we've all done. And I was like, will you tell everybody you know that I'm doing this? And that worked too. And some of them actually hired me. And I was like, you told me you make 16 grand a year.
Yeah.
But I don't know that their mom or dad is helping them out, or, like, I just assumed they were like, well, I'd love to come train with you. And I was like, well, I can't do it for free. They're like, no, I don't expect you to do it for free. Right. But when I went on that rampage of like, I need to do 40 hours a week of personal training, so I don't have to, once again, go to the warehouse, do this, do that. That was huge. And it's something I can see it's a struggle for everybody. I get it. It's a struggle to get out there and stand on the hood of your car and yell out that your stuff is available. But you have to. I'm terrified of social media. Yeah. I do not have the skin for that thing, but I got to do it.
So you're talking about social media. And one thing I wanted to point out is like, it is hard for me to go, hey, can you give us a referral? Or even on this podcast, like, by the way, good opportunity to say both TJ and Jason have things for sale. If you're interested in whatever those are, this is a plug for that. We could hit that towards the end of the podcast, but both of us do have jobs that require money. But the thing I always think about when I talk about referrals, or I talk about putting yourself out there, I talk about whatever. Do you have any resistance when you tell somebody about a great movie you saw over the weekend? Do you have any resistance when you tell somebody about a great trip? Oh, you got to go to Spain. It's unbelievable in Barcelona, whatever. Do you have any resistance when it comes to those things? You're the good movie that they saw last week. You're fucking Spain, man. Like, right. And so like, don't forget that if you really are doing whatever you're doing, listeners or whoever, whatever it is that you're doing, if you're excellent at it, if you're doing, valuable, work for your clients or helping people or whatever it is that you may be doing, you get to be the good movie that they want to go tell people about. And that's why I wanted to really talk a little bit about how you acquire clients, because I'm from the school of, shout out to all the folks who know me from the different, organizations that I've been a part of. I'm from the school of like KPIs, ad spend, looking at the lead funnels, making sure that the right number of people are making it through and kind of tweaking those percentages up as we go. And in a lot of the conversations we've had, not to say that you don't understand or use those types of things, but the approach you take from it is like, we're just going to do awesome stuff. We're going to help people. We're going to charge a reasonable amount. I'm going to hire great people and ask them to continuously get better. And so maybe continue down that path, because I think that's a part of what makes you kind of like what I think like a special entrepreneur as far as the folks that I've met.
Yeah, that's once again very nice of you. Let me give an example. Pandemic starts to open up a little bit. A ton of people we are the first county north of San Francisco, across the Golden Gate Bridge. It's a natural transition for people to move from the city at some point up to Marin County, or they can move to the East Bay or the South Bay, whichever way. But for a while, a good 5-6 years, we had very little interest in 30-year-olds joining our gym. And I talked to my real estate agents that come to the gym, and I talked to my people who are, who had kids in kindergarten, first grade, second grade. And I was like, what do these people do? And they kept coming back with, I don't know. I don't know what they do. I was like, well, find out for me. And they're like, they do a little of this, they do a little of that. And when the pandemic opened up and people kind of really came up here in droves, like they left like a nice place in the city for kind of a crappy bedroom, 2-bedroom rental up here, because they were like, I'm making the move, but I want to get out of the city, but I don't know what my, look to buy a home or whatever. And I reached out to them and I was like, hey, if you know people coming up here, I would love to have them join. That worked. Telling those people, hey, we would love to have more of you guys here. I don't expect my employees to do that. I don't expect my website to do that. I tell them, I'm like, I would love to, if your friends have any interest, I would love to talk to them, because that's what I do, right? I still, to this day, I teach 1 or 2 classes a week, simply in a sub basis. I just kind of keep myself open for that. I have 5 to 8 hours a week of personal training with literally people who I haven't taken a new client on in 5 or 7 years. They're just people who are like family at this point that I train. But I still do the intros. I do when somebody comes in, we do it by phone now, mostly because it's more convenient for them. And it's way more convenient for me because I don't have to go to different gyms and meet them in person. But saying like, I just want to talk to them if they have any interest. That's like, oh, okay. Well, and it's fascinating because those folks, and it's not that they're comparing me to other gyms. They're comparing me to experiences in general out in the world. They're like, I can't believe you do this. I can't believe you take a half an hour to tell me about the history of the gym and talk to me about what I'm doing and what I'm up to and my injury and, just talking to me. They're like, that doesn't happen in any other way, shape, or form in any experience they have. And as long as I can keep getting that out there because A, I enjoy it, B, I'll do it. Whether these gyms turn into my laboratory where I use them as for other things to figure out what's going on. I have no plans on ever getting rid of them. And so I think that that's so important for me. It's so important for me to teach teen classes every once in a while, which I did last week.
Cool. I
mean, TikTok, dry scooping. I mean, terminology.
Whoa, you got to explain dry scooping.
Dry scooping is literally the concept. We've seen it happen all the time where you just take that dry scoop of whatever protein powder and you just clunk, right?
That sounded a lot worse than it actually was. Okay,
right. And the problem is that they're doing that with pre-workout before school. So it is a problem, right? Okay. So, or multiple times a day, right? In high school.
Yeah.
And those types of things where I'm learning these different what's going on with a 32-year-old who works for Facebook and his wife works for Facebook and they have an 8-month-old and they just moved to Marin and they don't know anybody.
Yeah.
And they're like, I want to join your gym. I kind of don't know anybody. I do actually, and it's so many people now, as you know, like I have experience. I worked out at this gym in Chicago for 3 years. And then I worked at a gym in the city in San Francisco for 4 years. And then I think that's huge. I think that connection with people. I mean, look, if you're going to be Joe Main Street, go all in, be that guy, that shows up and you say hi to people. I walked out of Safeway yesterday. Boom. There's a member sitting there selling wreaths for his son's Boy Scout troop. And I'm like, I'll take one. Of course you're going to take one. Yeah. Right. I brought it home. My wife's like, this wreath's kind of ugly. I kind of don't like this wreath. I was like, it's John's kid for Boy Scouts. She was like, oh, I totally get it.
Sorry, John, if you hear this. Sorry, John.
Exactly. Names have been changed. So I think that literally is how I do it. And everybody here knows, they're like, you should talk to TJ. You should talk to TJ. Like if somebody at a party is complaining they don't say you should go to the gym that I go to. They just say they should talk to me. And I reinforce that. I constantly reinforce that. It doesn't have to be you, but I think it's better if you should talk to Nick at TJ's gym. That's my guy, my secondhand man. You should talk to Reese at TJ's gym. He runs the other facility. I mean, because that's what people say. They're like, you should talk to that individual. Yeah.
I mean, that's what we say, right? Like if you're looking to build a website, I'm like, oh, you got to talk to them. If you're looking to do this, you got to talk to them. And that's why, that's why testimonials and commercials with celebrity endorsers, that's why that works, right?
Right.
But two truisms that I kind of wanted to point out that I think you and I are taking for granted, but I want to make sure, because if you run an auto shop, you may not be thinking about this. Number one is organic leads, that means that somebody raised their hand and said, I want to work with you, as opposed to, let's say, paid leads. Mm-hmm. Are going to come in at a higher percentage. They're going to schedule easier. They're going to come in at a higher percentage. They're going to be a shorter sale. They're going to buy easier. They're going to buy a higher ticket, and they're going to stay longer. That's proven by just years and years of data, right? And so the one thing that I've always loved is an organic first approach. Like I said earlier, I do a lot of paid advertising and have for years, though currently one of my businesses is not and is doing very well. The second thing was going to be if you had to put a number to it, what do you think your close rate is?
It's probably it's definitely taken a dip for the pandemic.
Sure.
I literally had I had two people in the last 18 months were drunk on the phone with me during the day.
And that's not that fun. That's not funny as that sinks in.
It's not funny, but it is like, oh, I'm talking to different people. I'm talking to people who want help. Obviously, they're willing to follow through. So it's definitely down, but if it went from 90%, it's down to high 70s. You know what I mean? It's completely worth it. That's for sure.
Well, and so to add color to that, that's conviction, right? Because there's the two people that will sell the best at any business are going to be one, the founder, and then two is going to be the first follower, or the person who you've changed their lives. Especially, I'm talking mostly from a health and wellness, but also any kind of customer service business. Those are the people that are going to evangelize your business, your service, your product, whatever it is. Because I can tell you, without even going into detail, that TJ's Gym is not the cheapest place in town. No. It's not. There is no 29 days for $21 or any of those
no
things.
Free workout.
Exactly.
No free Saturdays. No.
And so particularly for younger folks that are trying to leverage deals and offers, that's not to say that deals and offers aren't valuable. I'm certainly guilty of often using deals and offers. But the thing that you have in spades, especially when you're young like that in a new business, is the passion and conviction and energy that you can do and deliver on that thing that you're offering. And so, somebody like you is such a great testament to yeah, well, I bet you haven't hung up the phone that often and had less energy than when you got on.
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
100%.
Yeah.
It's obviously why I do it. And it's obviously why I don't do payroll. And it's obviously why I don't do cleaning, right? Or whatever else, right? It's like, I never even thought about giving up these intros at any point because it's just right in my wheelhouse.
Yeah,
so
I love that.
But it is also why I pulled myself out of teaching classes this year. Why I was like, I'm not going to be scheduled anymore because I'm a little fucking grouchy. Yeah. Sometimes I'm a little snarky. I'm kind of, if you don't scrub your chalk off your bar, I get a little pissy. And that's not what people come for. That's not best hour of their day. And God forbid I catch one of my employees doing what I'm doing. So, I gotta remove myself a little bit here, get a little perspective. I've done my 30,000 hours of personal training in the last 30 years. I've done my, 20,000 hours of teaching classes. Okay. I'm a quote unquote expert, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But that doesn't mean that you're good at it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and to that point, that's why that's what makes, I think, you a really, really interesting person, but also person to have on the podcast, is that I know lots of people that have been in the fitness industry for 30 years. Mm-hmm. I would not invite any of them almost. Mm-hmm. If you're listening to this, you're not the one. But I wouldn't invite almost any of them to be on this because I've just talking to you, see you evolving. Interesting point. You can only teach somebody how to squat so many different times in a row before that gets boring. But I bet you could meet an infinite number of new people and develop an infinite number of new relationships and develop and help an infinite number of people. It's the rote strokes that probably kind of go. Because even for me, coming out of what I had done previous to this, which was consulting for brick and mortar businesses, the thing that it was not the thing. Like, frankly, I'm pursuing a career in talking to other entrepreneurs. I love that. It's the thing where it's the same, very limited instruction every single time that can wear on you a little bit. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I recently picked up the Saturday morning class, came available.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me back this up. Sure. My buddy moved from here. Very good friend of mine who's been a member of the gym for 8 or 9 years, moved from here to Park City, Utah. And he now belongs to Chris Spieler's gym, who I have never met. Yeah. And he said, Chris teaches 1 or 2 of the early morning, 5:30, 6 a.m. classes every week. And it stuck in my head. He had come back to visit. He told me that. And I was like, When this availability came up for this Saturday morning class, I realized too, my life has changed. I have a daughter in college, another daughter is a senior in high school. There's no demand for me at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning to be anywhere. I'm not being pulled in different directions. And I was like, I'll take that class. It won't be for forever, but I'm going to I'm going to take this thing because I get to see the greatest number of people at one time. And last weekend was the first time I did it. And it was crackling. It was electric. Yeah. It was the energy in the room was so great. It was people, and here in Marin County, as well as in California, we've been very slow on the uptake of coming back to normalcy. I mean, we are, you're going to see people driving in their cars with their masks on. You're going to see people, not going into places and, it's just, restaurants and gyms and all that stuff. It's a slow comeback. And to be in there with these folks, it felt very reunion-y. It felt very, everybody kind of got right back into their roles again and kind of brought the hammer on the workout. And we are post-pandemic workout stuff. There's no rope climbs. There's no technical lifts. People are just in there like, oof, I hit the skids for 12 to 18 months. I wasn't exactly on top of it. So being in that room where people are like, yes, my thing is back. I'm going to get back to where I was 18 months ago when this thing all started. And I was like, oh my God, I was shocked. It shocked me how much I was like, oh my, I'm in, I'm looking forward to next week. Yeah. And that's a weird feeling. And I think removing myself was huge to be out of that whole thing. When the pandemic started, I was teaching every single one of the Zoom classes. And then when classes came back, Nick and I were teaching every single one of the live classes. And then, I was doing teen intakes when we started our teen program. Yeah. Like I was doing all the stuff. Like I had no employees. And when I walked away from it, I was like, I'm never going to do that stuff again. And it's like, no, that's not what it is. It's picking your spots.
First of all, I coached. I went from, I was coaching 3 classes that I worked out in. Not to get too in the weeds on the fitness, but coming back from COVID, we did a coffee chat with the owner every single day, 5 days a week. We were doing like live table reads of like Parks and Rec episodes, Zoom. I mean, just all sorts of stuff that, and what that is to say, that short story is to kind of tie into you and just say that if you're listening to this and you don't feel some at least correlated feeling or energy about the business that you do now, whatever the motivators are, whatever the industry, it might be worth reconsidering. Because I can tell you that the upside of having a business like the ones that I have had in the past and that continue to be a part of in some ways and that you have, it's amazing to be able to get energy from the things that you do. I always like to tell people, and I got this from, I think it was Mike Bledsoe from Barbell Shrugged, that said, there's work you can do that, gives you energy. No matter how much of it you do, you will come out of it with more energy. I'm going to be pumped up after this call. I'm pumped up after almost every call. And this is my third call in a row. Right. There's work that you can do, but it drains you. At the end of the day, you're tired. You can do it. Maybe you're even good at it. Limit that. And then there's work that you can't do and just completely, immediately, as soon as possible, hire somebody else to do that. And to seek that out. The flip side of that coin is we've chosen in the past for me and currently for you to have a business where people are super passionate about it. They want to work for you as a part-time job. You've got people that are probably making $250,000 a year at some other place, in town, which in your area is not unheard of. And they come to you to work for 20 or 30 or whatever it is. And so maybe if you could speak a little bit, because one thing is, if you're listening to this and your business doesn't hire $250,000, $100,000 a year employees, how do you manage a team of people that maybe don't pay their rent from what you do? How do you maneuver? I almost said manipulate, but it is maybe the right word. How do you manipulate a body of people to get the desired outcome, to have a great business when you're not their capital B boss?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question, and one that I actually take pride in, and one that Samantha came and worked for us because I asked her to. She had been a 10-year member. She was somebody who was in class, she's kind of a connector, right? And we've all seen them in our gyms. And look, I am having a hiring problem. Like I think a lot of people are. I am short people who I need, but So when it came to that point where I was literally like looking around, like, I gotta bring somebody in. I mean, we get 6 to 7 applications out of the blue a year of people contacting us to come work for us. And we haven't had any in 2 years. It's like, what's going on here? And when I tapped Samantha and she was honored, she was like looking around, like, and I was like, yeah, exactly. I was like, here's what I have available and here's what I need. And could you do this? Could I do this? And she's as a career, she is a project manager for a tech company. And this is when she said she could do it. And if that would be great, she comes in the next week with her sweatshirt that she had recently bought from us as a member. And she had Coach like ironed onto the back that she did herself.
Yeah.
And I was like, I see you. I see that. I see that, Coach. She's like, she just was wearing it with such pride. Pride. I had a great coach working for me right when the pandemic was starting to lift, whenever that was, a little over a year ago in the summertime, and people were finally coming back. And she had just graduated from college and she was running out of her parents' house. She was running a doggy daycare. And that was what she was doing. Instagram account, website, the whole thing. And I was like, any chance you'd be interested in, 5 to 10 hours a week? She's like, sure. And she crushed it for the time she was with me. I made her sit down with me and we talked about her doggy daycare business. I made her sit down. I knew the clock was ticking. I knew. And when that day came where she was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm so busy with this other thing. Yeah. But I made sure that it was like, no expectations, all I want to do. And, I would love to say that for 20 years of owning a gym, I've been like this. I haven't. I wasn't. I was like, this is the job, do the job. But, not that recent. I came to the point where I was like, I want to get everything I can out of this person. Without sharing names, one of my employees is going through a breakup and he's new to the area and has another part-time job here, really more of a full-time job. And he works for me part-time. And I'm doing everything I can to find him to house sit and, couches to crash on. And because it didn't work out, with his significant other. And I'm like, that's my responsibility. That is my responsibility because while I have a coach who, by working for me for the last 10 years, he now owns a house and a Tesla and a 9-foot Christmas tree and all of the things by working for me. There's other people who are like, hey man, this is a bridge. I need a bridge. And I'm like, I'm going to give you a bridge. And my hope is that you're going to walk away from this thing and be like, that was awesome. I'm so glad I did for that 6 months to 3 years when I did that. And I think that's the key for me to feel good. And then when they're like, so it looks like I'm going to be moving on in 2 weeks or in a month. This is what's going on. It's not a surprise. Nobody gets their heart broken. Nobody, and as long as they do have to sit in my office every week or two and tell me what's going on. And we talk about it and how can I help? And that's been the key for me,
Today's show is brought to you by HighLevel CRM. HighLevel is an all-in-one platform designed to help entrepreneurs grow their businesses without the need for multiple softwares or an IT team. Not only does their easy-to-use software allow you to track and manage your leads throughout each phase of the relationship, but it also allows you to build funnels, track stats, and more. Guys, I sat down and added up the cost of software I was able to replace with just one app, and it was over $1,000 per month. Because this is an all-in-one application, I also save a ton of headaches connecting apps and building automations, and the team at Go HighLevel does a great job of getting you started quickly and easily when you sign on. I cannot more highly recommend these guys. Right now, Spear and Clover listeners get a free 14-day trial of HighLevel CRM for themselves. Click the link in our show notes to support the show and get started on your free 14-day trial today. Today's show is brought to you by Scaling with Media. I mean, literally, if it weren't for the folks at Scaling with Media, you would not be getting this. Scaling with Media is a truly revolutionary company for any entrepreneur who wants to reach a larger audience without taking on the years of experience necessary to master the required skills. These guys do it all. From helping you develop your creative plan to editing, sourcing content, copywriting, ads management, and way more. Whether you're looking to launch a YouTube channel or podcast, or you just want to scale your business out to more eyeballs, these guys are the absolute best one-stop shop. But that's not all. Right now, Spear and Clover listeners who sign up for their brand launch package will receive a free, that's right, free professional grade studio kit that I'm actually recording right now on. The studio kit includes a professional microphone, stand, lighting, and headphones, and is worth well over $500. Take action now by going to scalingwithmedia.com/spear and claim your free studio kit. Again, that's scalingwithmedia.com/spear, scalingwithmedia.com/spear. Now back to the show. Yeah, and I think, just having had this conversation, this is not an uncommon trajectory of conversation for a gym owner. I would imagine it's probably not super uncommon for other businesses, but particularly for fitness, in the beginning, you have to be everything for everybody. And you have to be, I'm the king of the fitness in this town or whatever it is. You could be a house painter for all I care.
Right.
But I did get to a point where I felt confident enough in what we were doing. And I felt confident enough, I've said for a long time, I don't have any competitors other than the couch. I don't view Planet Fitness or Lifetime or whatever. And again, this does apply across industries, but I don't view those as competitive for me. If I was Coca-Cola, maybe I'd feel a little different. But in our case, so many people aren't going to use a service like mine that there's just nothing but opportunity. It's a blue ocean out there, no matter how many gyms you were to open. And that, I'm going to get attacked for that comment, but whatever. The thing I would say is, how would you apply this? So if, and I would agree with you that you and I are experts at sort of running a team of people who are there for reasons that maybe aren't just financial, right? And getting them to do stuff that maybe is hard, getting them to be consistent or to wear a uniform or to show up early or to stay late or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And so what do you think what skill set or methods or advice would you give to somebody that's how could you help somebody outside of fitness that might be listening to this? What skill do you have? Not saying you would go do it, but that could travel for the listeners that maybe don't own a gym and maybe they're a mortgage broker or, doing something, they work at a bank or, they're a house sitter or whatever it may be. What mark could you maybe transfer from your skill set to other organizations?
A great question. And I would say that the change that's happened in me is what I have resisted forever, which was in my time of having mentors who would ask me these kind of questions that were out in the aura. They were in the ether, like how would you want to change the world? Or what do you when you dream about the impact you'll have on this world after you're gone, what is it? And I'd be like, I am not that guy. I am the utilitarian grinder. I do the work that's in front of me. And damn it, if they weren't right. Damn it. And I say, damn it, because if I had gotten to this earlier and been like, what do I want? What am I good at? What brings me to this place so that I can do it? And let's say you want to do something, but there's a financial issue, right? You have to then say, I need to change the financial issue in order to keep doing the thing that I'm doing, right? If you find out, if you're like me, where I'm a builder and I like to build, you better figure out how to build. I built a kettlebell rack a month ago. It was the greatest 72 hours of my life, pre and post. I mean, I was just hot. I took a picture of it. I literally was laying in bed looking at it. Right. Yeah. And it went away. It's fleeting, but I was like, okay, so it doesn't have to be, I open another gym.
Right.
It just has to be built. And because I do that, I am happy to answer your question. I am happy to replace toilet paper in the bathroom. I am happy to deal with the other stuff because I do have this other thing that I'm working on. And I think it's a little too broad to be like, well, every job should have an entrepreneurial spirit. You got to get way more micro than that. You got to get way more personal with it. You got to get way down in there to be like, I like this job because of the benefits that it gives me. And because I know at 5 o'clock, I'm walking out the door, because at 5:20, I am doing this for me and nobody else. And I know that at some point it's like, because I get to go home and see my kid. Well, I can tell you that changes because your kid doesn't want to see you. And then your kid leaves if you've done it correctly. Right. So what is it? Right. So what is the thing? What do you take out of, I want to be home and see my kid? It sounds like you want to go home and you want to attach to something that's personal to you. And I don't know. I don't want to get into the semantics of it, but I think that that's huge. I think that you can take the thing that you're doing. One of the things we talk about, Jay, this is like, okay, so this unit called this gym makes me this much money, and this gym makes me this much money. And if I want more money, I have to stop trying to beat money out of this gym.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like, this is, wow, I have now 5, 8, 10, 15 years to show me this is it. So when the rent goes up and when payroll goes up or taxes go up or utilities go up, and that eats into the profit because this gym, well, okay, you should know that that's happening. So what else do you want to get out of this thing? Like I said, like if this thing becomes a break-even lab and other things that I want to do are providing me with the financial side that I need in life, great. Let me keep this going because, for example, these gyms are so important to my kids. They are so important. They don't ask about them every day. They don't come here every day. But the sweatshirts and t-shirts that they wear and at school, and knowing that this is theirs, that is part of their family. We had to close one of our gyms beginning of the pandemic. They took it way harder than I did. Way harder. For me, it was like, okay, moving on. We got to keep surviving. Got to keep this ship afloat. This is a great thing that we're getting out of this because our lease ended. That's why we got out of there, because the lease ended. The landlord wouldn't work with us. So, okay, we're moving on. We went there for the final day. My kids were wrecked because they grew up in that gym. It was the one we'd owned for the longest period of time. Yeah. And so if you can crack that code for yourself, and I will tell you this, I had to do the work. I had to have people holding me accountable to answering these types of questions. I had to have people asking me. I had to invest time, money, and effort into this thing in many different ways. Our group is one of the things that got me there. The other mentors that I had who were working with me, and I was like laughing at them. And I was like, I'm never going to say I have grace. I use the term grace. I'm never going to say I have a humility or I honor myself around Like these are all like silly terms. And I say that stuff now. I 100% say that stuff now because, I have, for example, I have a coach who's helping me with my next project. And if I don't have the work done for her and I say to her, it's okay. I mean, I could tell you why I didn't get everything done, but it's damn good reasons. And it's all right. I'm not going to give you excuses but it's good reasons for that, and before I'd be like, doing this whole song and dance as to why I didn't get it done or whatever, and sometimes it's because I'm busy and sometimes it's because my head is not in the right place. And once again, I give myself that grace to be like, don't do it shitty. Just don't do it. Right. Get right.
I think that comes from a place of such power. So one of the people I respect a ton and who's been a mentor to me and will hopefully be a guest on this show, Martin Rawls-Meehan, runs a much larger company than any of mine. And I worked for him even, and I've never seen him unrealistically angry. I've never heard him yell at an employee. He's always so graceful. And I think at the core, and you describing it makes me think of that, and I've gotten to that point in stages, although I'd like to work on it, that the statement you're making is I'm so confident in myself or my system or this business that we've built that whatever stumble you're about to tell me, I have the vision to realize that it's not, A, it may not even be a big deal, but B, that it's not going to make anything better for me to get angry about it or upset or even think of it as a big deal. And I think, you talk about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There's like a hierarchy of needs that you have to have so many of them met to the point where your gut reaction is grace, right? That's like, you think about like extreme ownership, and there's levels to that where it's like, I have ownership where in the beginning where it's like, you fucked up, it's your fault. And then there's this middle point where you're like, you fucked up, God, that's my fault, which is good. And then there's a point where like, that's your just gut instinct is like, damn it, I should have trained him better, or whatever it may be. Right. And I think there's just so much maturity, wisdom, and like it's rooted in like a core of strength when it's not like, when you think about it, it was really my fault. No, it's more like, that's on me. Or like, yes. Or this bump comes up or a fire comes up in the business and you're like, well, I've seen this 1,000 times. We're going to be fine. That's conviction, and that's why you got a 90% close rate. You alluded to another project. We talked about the 3 mountains that you could climb and maybe climbing a new mountain. Maybe talk a little bit about what's coming up in the future for you.
Yeah. So thanks for asking. So I've had one of my mentors at the beginning of the pandemic, when he called me up, he said, he was so chipper. I literally was like dropping off rowers and airdynes at clients' houses from the back of my truck to keep them engaged with Zoom. Yeah. And he's like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, good. I have to teach a Zoom class in like 15 minutes. What's going on? And he's like, yeah, I'm just excited for you. I'm excited about the next step. And I was like, what next step? Like, my gym of 20 years is gone. Everybody hit stop on the, on the memberships. And he's like, you get to choose to do whatever you want to do. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about right now. I can't handle this bullshit cheeriness, excitement that you're having right now, because I'm just not there. Yeah. And he worked me. He would not let go. This guy Hyder will get all the credit in the world for just not, with only being concerned about my well-being and me getting to where I wanted to go, even though I didn't know I wanted to go anywhere. And so this is a little bit of a long story that you should feel free to just chop the shit out of this in any way you need to.
Hit it, man.
But during the pandemic, as I was desperately looking for information, as we all were, I have Sirius XM in my truck, and I was mostly looking for information. My kid was deciding on taking a gap year. And I was looking for information for her, like what are colleges going to do and what's going to happen? Is she not going to go to college? And as I was like scrolling the channels and going higher and higher and higher past the, religious channels and past the reggae channels and way up, I came across this channel called Road Dog Radio.
Sure.
And all things trucking. I mean, you want to know about trucking? This thing is like how to be a female trucker, how to be a healthy trucker, how to invest your money as a trucker, like a glass door for truckers, maintenance on your truck, hour shows for 24 hours a day. And the interesting thing was that during the pandemic, these guys had all the information. Because basically they just turned it into a 24-hour a day call-in show where truckers were calling and talking about what they heard when they were dropping off stuff in Austin, Texas. And then they drove out to Seattle and dropped off stuff, and then what they heard there. And it was fascinating to hear the stories that they were sharing and talking about. But what it stoked in my head was why I don't consider myself in the fitness industry as much as I consider myself kind of in the entrepreneurial fitness industry, or what I like to call the pirates of the fitness industry. People who are like, you know what, this is a good industry. I'm into it. And I'm going to bet on myself. And in any way, shape, or form. They could be coaches, they could be personal trainers, massage therapists, even, yoga studio owners, you name it, right? Anybody who's like, all right, there's like a franchise corporate model over there, and there's those of us over here. And I did some research, and, of the, whatever it is, $100 billion a year fitness industry, half of it comes from those pirates, right? So it's a substantial group. And I said to myself, why don't I have something like Road Dog Radio for me? For my industry? Why is this information? There's plenty of stuff out there we want to hear about and share. And for the main part, I think we've done it to ourselves, right? We silo ourselves out. We grab a little bit of real estate in the revenue profit area. And then we scurry back to our corner and we throw up our walls and we keep everybody out. And we're like, this is my shit and you can have that, but I don't want you to take any of mine. And good information is not shared at that level, and I was learning so much through our group meetings with these individuals who are like, I'm sharing everything. I mean, like out of my head, my books are open to you guys, just all of it.
Yeah.
And I found out that, wow, shockingly in other industries, that's what people do. Heads of huge financial services companies and healthcare companies and, big industries, they do that. They get together and they share this stuff. They don't silo themselves, wall themselves off. So my goal is to create a media company that resources, knowledge, interviews, information that are applicable and usable for the pirates of the fitness industry. It's going to be called the Con, which is the raised rear surface of a pirate ship that controls the rudder and the
Cool.
direction, navigation, the sails and everything, Mr. Sulu, you have the Con type of thing.
Yeah.
And it will be launching in mid-January. And the goal is to get that stuff out there in the form of a newsletter, podcast, and a YouTube channel. And I'm excited about it. Yeah. So that's the next project.
Well, this far in, anybody listening is going to be excited to check that out because this has been a really great conversation so far, and we're not quite finished yet, but that's so exciting. And that's the first I've heard that the Con. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to hear what comes next. I've been privileged to be a part of some of these conversations, and you've sent me some interesting kind of questionnaires and things like that. Mm-hmm. The process that you've gone about this is so interesting and really, really inspiring, and definitely not. I'm much less thorough. I just throw railroad out and just start going.
Which is beautiful too.
Yeah, well,
it's beautiful in its own way.
I think truly the beauty is in people like you or people like me that can identify what their method is and really lean in and hammer that. But that's awesome, man. I'm so excited to see that and hear that. We'll, this podcast won't drop until sometime in January, so we'll have some links up in the notes to this show, however you're consuming it. Right. I have a couple questions for you that I've been asking everybody. One is, if you had, I'm going to apply this to your business, so you can choose it to be the Con or you can choose it to be the gyms. Mm-hmm. If you had access to unlimited resources, what one thing would you do to grow your business?
That's good. I would probably be hammering content creation in all ways, shapes, and forms.
Yeah.
And I say that not necessarily knowing that it would work, but that I'm incredibly interested in it. Mm-hmm. I'm incredibly interested in creating content, finding good content, curating it, getting it out. We changed the style of our Inner Gym newsletter where, through Squarespace, we're putting out the newsletter where it's just hyperlinked, and I'm playing with what gets clicks, right? I'm playing with, oh, wow, I put, some fitnessy things, some nutrition things, and some things happening in our county. And wow, the things happening in our county are triple consumed compared to everything else. So let me move that to the top of the page. Let me tie that in. Let me tell them what's going on with the old movie theater. Let me tell them what I know is going on. And it's right there for them. I mean, they could open up the newspaper and look it up, but they trust me, and because they're like, well, TJ's at these gyms and he's talking to so many people every day. Maybe he has more information, or I trust his information that he's putting out there about this stuff, along with, oh, you should eat, Steve's paleo kits because it's got a great moral message behind it. And, oh, you should, this is what we fed our kids, and that stuff they trust as well. But it's in a fascinating way of seeing just the opening race, just climbing, and being able to kind of play around with that. That has to, in my opinion, along with social media or, any of the other aspects, that has to, in this day and age, strengthen your community. It has to. It's just the way it is, whether we like it or not. Steve Spurrier is coach of the bunch of Florida and South Carolina, I believe. And they asked him why college coaches change jobs so often. He said, my pappy was a preacher, and he said, son, we got to move. They all have heard my shit, right? You can't keep getting up there and doing your song and dance because they've heard it, whether they've heard the tone or they've actually heard the message over and over, they've heard the story, but they do want information. Everybody does, And so that's what I think I would put it towards. I would put it towards, trying it. If I had unlimited resources, I have a 21-year-old who's doing stuff for me where I'm like, tell me what's out there. I don't know from your perspective, right? My kids are teaching me TikTok. My 50-year-olds are teaching me Twitter. And I used to be like, Instagram, we put up a picture of a group of people, which we still do. That's what that's for. My demographic told me on Instagram, they want to see that their friends are at the gym, whether they're coming to the gym or not. So that's what we do. We just do group pictures, hey, everybody's arm in arm. And that's what Instagram is for us. And now we're delving into how do we tell other stories and create more content in other avenues that people will consume in different ways that necessarily I don't have to create it, because once again, I think majority of people have heard my stuff. So yeah. How about you? I'm curious as to.
So as far as what about me, I want to address yours first and then I'll tell you mine. Yeah. But I think there's this concept that I love thinking about. It comes into my mind a lot. And it's just the word undeniability or undeniable. And so throughout your story, and particularly when you talk about what you would do with unlimited resources, you're undeniable in that you've spent the last however many years, maybe 30 years, there's nobody else that could do the thing you're about to do. There's nobody else who would have the authenticity, would have the gravity, that would have the network, that would have people like tripping over themselves, I'm sure, to participate or to subscribe or whatever it may be. That's undeniability. And I think ultimately, even very early on, how many people would have made the choices that you made? Very few. How many people would have made that series of choices? Almost none, if not none. There's a comedian, Bert Kreischer, who always talks about I don't want somebody to be able to steal my jokes. So I just tell stories that they couldn't possibly steal because they wouldn't even be funny because there'd be no connection to them. And so I think that's great. And I think, that concept of undeniability that you to me represent, there's no amount of money in your bank account that can fuck with that. Because ultimately, it seems to me like you live a pretty good quality of life. I know you drive a Bronco, which, shout out to my Bronco brothers. That's all Broncos, by the way.
That's awesome.
Anyway,
that's awesome.
And so to me, that makes you undeniable. And that's where I'm not surprised to hear that content and creating that because it's so much more infinitely scalable for a thing you couldn't scale out across the country. You couldn't have TJ's gym.
No way.
And at least in fitness, if you're watching this and you're not aware, at least in fitness, I have yet to see excellence in the way that I know if I were to be a member at your gym that I would see scaled out. Maybe Soul Cycle does it, a version of it, or maybe Barry's Boot Camp does a version of it. But certainly, and again, I'm not going to disparage anybody. I'll shout those two out as people that I think have done a pretty good job. Yeah. But it's so difficult to SOP and scale that out. My God. Whereas what can your content can potentially be scaled out to so many people. It's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about doing this podcast. And so to answer your question, that you asked what I would do, I'm doing it. And that's because I've been privy to the fucking preview, bro. I've had these conversations for years and I know how good they are. And it's not me, it's this. And if I were younger, watching this would fucking pump me up, man. Yeah. And so to me, it's like when the number one question, or maybe the thing that I stumble across the most is scale. Guys like us do not often find ways to scale. Right. The people that you do see with this massive scale, well, they skipped over a lot of the stuff that we put a lot of time and effort into. Right. And so when I look at, for me, what I'm doing is this podcast. And this podcast is an opportunity to scale out this really brilliant, undeniable ember that I've seen individually with so many people like you, and that I'm really, really excited to share with more people. And admittedly, maybe it's not quite, maybe it won't be quite as raw at all times, or maybe it won't be quite as, I'm certainly not going to be challenging folks and pushing back quite the same as if I was, mentoring them as a consultant, right? But so that's my answer is to me, my answer to scale, at least for now, is this opportunity to do this thing that gives me energy and that I think is impactful for folks. I mean, truthfully, some of these calls or some of these podcasts, I just kind of need to sit here and nod, right?
Right.
So this isn't like me like tooting my own horn, but so that brings me to the second question, which is if you had to start a brand new business, I'm going to pull the one that hasn't started yet as being already started. But if you had to start a brand new business and it could not be in fitness, what would it be?
Are you asking for me, if it was me or anybody out there in the world?
For you right now, not like younger. Yeah.
If I were to take what I said earlier and say I was betting on me, and I had the time to develop a skill set specifically in an area, something I could build around a community.
Yeah.
Online, in person, locally, can I, for a short time when I first owned the gym, and the gym was kind of up and it was running, and I was like, okay, but my kids are little, so I get to go home and I get to take care of them and things are working. I actually started a home services company. I was like, okay, washing windows and mowing lawns and interior cleaning and grill cleaning and taking in your mail when you're away, or babysitting your dog. These are all things that don't require a high amount of skill. And I'm the guy. When you call and I'm saying, I'm interested, I show up at your house, I do a walkthrough, and it became successful. And I literally, when CrossFit showed up, so this thing was growing, CrossFit was growing, I kind of handed it off to the woman who was actually doing the work. Uh-huh. I was like, Sarah, you take this. Like, I got this thing going on here that is like making my hair on my arms stand up. So I have to go do this. Yeah. But I was like unintentionally creating a community with my clients in that way, where I was like, oh, hey, Beth, as we were talking, you were mentioning something about having a hard time finding a plumber, and Beth, my other client, she has somebody. So I'm just going to give you Beth's phone number and you can talk to her, and see what she thought of her plumber, that kind of thing. Like I think I can do that. I think if I was a house painter or owned a house painting company, I think I could create community out of it. I think I could create community out of, a lot of different things that don't require, I got to go to school for this job. I think that if you can just kind of get it up and running and then take that attitude. There's a guy who I know who's in my town. He doesn't come to the gym, but he started his own painting company. I think he had his house. He was very unsatisfied, from what I understand, with whatever his career was. A guy came and painted his house who was like a guy off of Craigslist. He did a great job. And he was like, what if I kind of back you and we see what this thing is? And I see their signs and trucks everywhere now. And I'm like, fuck yeah. Now, like, do more with that. Don't just paint houses well. Yeah. Do more. Like have a night at a bar with all your clients, and the guys who paint for you. Have a softball team. Have a, what I mean? Like, do more stuff with that, because that will make it so that you can it'll run itself. There was something to Greg Glassman stepping away from that message board way back in the day, in 2008, where it was like, if he said anything at that point, it was like once a year, and it was like, kind of with reverence. And then by then, by 2010, 11, he was gone. Right. I mean, it was just off of there. And that would have been the only place where I stayed. Right. You wouldn't see me in videos. You wouldn't see me in, I would go to the games, and do that part of it, but I would stay attached to that community, because I think for me, I don't think I have the patience to be like, I'm going to take 2 to 3 to 5 years and learn this trade or this skill or go to school for this thing. Like, I'm way too much of a doer. Like, I need to get this thing done. With this media company, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. So I hired a coach who's like coaching me through the different aspects of it, but I have stuff to do, which is great. It's perfect for me. Right. And she keeps, when I get a little like, like doubtful, she's like, you're just going to create a community. It's all you're going to do. You're going to create and curate and help a community. Like, right. I can do that. So, yeah.
That's a perfect answer. I would even offer that you probably could actively try not to create a community and still would. I think I think that's the food, man. I think for guys like you and guys like me, like that's the thing, whether you choose to acknowledge it or not. And certainly you have this hierarchy of needs financially, but that's the thing is like, I can't hear somebody say they're a good tattoo artist or they know a good tattoo artist and then meet someone with a naked arm who's open to getting a tattoo and not connect those two motherfuckers. I can't do it. And like, you're just presented with that often. I mean, it's time and time again, I see it. Second point, I wish we had Donna. I should pull her in here right now. Has to tell me at least twice a week not to start that company in Northwest Indiana, because dude, Northwest Indiana, if you're from there and listening to this, I love you, but you got to have a checkbook. You got to love being on the phone. It should be a landline. Like, you can't get anything done. I've been trying to get my driveway done. Again, shout out to Brendan if you're listening to this. I've been trying to get my driveway done for 3 months. I can't even get a quote, like let alone a good price. And so that would probably be an incredibly lucrative business. I think right now, I certainly we don't have to talk about it now, but right now the economy is such that, like, man, I know you said you have some staffing problems, but I look at our business and yours, I'm certain too. And I'm like, people aren't quitting because they don't hate their job. Now, that doesn't mean people aren't changing their lives, but like, it's interesting though, because, to get a plumber out, there's a lot of folks that didn't want to do it anymore. To get a driveway guy out, a lot of folks are like, fuck it. They're sitting at home. And I think a lot of people are starting their own business. I think a lot of people, you and I are choosing to start a podcast at probably the single biggest month of starting a podcast in hindsight, I bet you.
Yeah.
But truthfully, I think that, and I'm talking for you, but a little for me, because you're undeniable in being yourself. And I think because you're aware of that, I have nothing but high expectations. I think you're going to crush this, man. I'm so grateful for your time, and this has been a really good conversation, my friend. Well,
thank you so much for the best wishes, and you as well have found the thing. This is what you do. This is you get this ability to pull information out of people and ask questions that I never would have thought to ask anyone else as well as myself, which is great. You have such great insight as well as interest in what people are saying. And I mean, you have consumed so much information in your time since the Army as well as in the Army that it's time to let it out. It's time to be like, look, guys, this is going to come out here, and I promise it will be beneficial. So we're all lucky that you've taken this jump. That's for sure, buddy. Well,
that is so sweet of you to say. You're also a sweet guy. So one more time for the folks at home, how can they get a hold of you if they live in the Bay Area? For the gyms, anything that, anything you can plug, now would be the opportunity. And again, we're going to probably release this after you guys have launched. So TJ's Gym, TJSGYM.com is the best way to get a hold of me. Just send me an email there. We're on all the socials, thecon.co, thecon.co on Instagram and Twitter as well. We'll be up and live shortly. And just feel free to leave a comment or take a look at what we got going on. And that's where I'm at. Is that CON?
The CONN.
Okay.
CONN. Yeah. Okay. So that's
awesome.
That's the technical term for that rise in the back of the ship. So yeah.
Well, brother, I think this was a really good sort of origin story conversation. I'd love to have you back on. Obviously, if you're doing guests, I would love to participate in the con as well.
You 100% will be. Yes.
But that's it, man. I appreciate your time. And for those folks at home, thanks for listening to the Spear and Clover podcast.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you guys so much for watching or listening to the show. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to show us some love by liking, rating, and subscribing so we can keep making more and better content. If you'd like to support the show and get a great additional content like exclusive shows and even live group masterminds, please head over to patreon.com/Spear and Clover to become a member of the tribe. If you're interested in learning more about how we help entrepreneurs, visit spearandclover.com or message us on any of our platforms. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.